On page 217 and 218, we are going to be solving multi-step inequalities. So we solve these the same as equations, only if you multiply or divide by a negative, you have to remember to flip the sign around. We are also going to learn a new way to write our answers. So it's called interval notation. It's just a new way to write our answers. You're still going to have your answer with an equality sign, you're going to graph it, and then you're going to use interval notation. So when we use interval notation, if we have an open circle, which means we had a less than sign or a greater than sign, then you use a parenthesis. Brackets means you have less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, because a close sign, because that means you include the number. With infinity or negative infinity, you are always going to have a parenthesis. So it will look like this, parenthesis, negative infinity, and then this one would be infinity and then a parenthesis. Okay, so you always have infinity because you can't technically reach infinity. So this video is going to have the even problems, and then another video will have the odd problems. So if we look at number 2, the first thing you need to do is distribute a negative 3. So bring the x down, you're distributing negative 3. So minus 3x minus 6 is greater than 4. We combine our like terms. 1 minus 3x is negative 2x minus 6 is greater than 4. We add 6 to both sides. Negative 2x is greater than 10. We divide by negative 2, so that's when we have to flip the sign. So our answer is x is less than negative 5. So we would put negative 5 in the middle. I'm going to skip one and put negative 4 here and negative 6 here. We would have an open circle because it's strictly less than and shade to the left. Again, if you would rather just do a circle above and then an arrow, that's fine. So interval notation, we need to read from left to right. So we're actually starting, we're not starting with negative 5, we're starting with negative infinity. So it's parenthesis negative infinity because that tells us we can go down or left as far as we want, comma, negative 5, and negative 5 has a parenthesis because it's an open circle. So that's what the interval notation will look like for number 2. So anytime you have a less than sign, you're going to start with a negative infinity. Number 4, first we need to distribute negative 8. So negative 8x plus 8 minus x is less than or equal to negative 28. Combine our like terms. Some of you are also able to move the constant over at the same time. If you can, great. Negative 9x plus 8 is less than or equal to negative 28. Then we would subtract 8. I'm going to rewrite it up here. Negative 9x is less than or equal to negative 36. Divide by negative 9, so we need to flip the sign. X is greater than or equal to positive 4. So I'm going to put 4 there, skip 1 and put 5, skip 1 and put 3. This time we have a closed circle because we're including 4, and we shade to the right for greater than. So now that it's a greater than, we start with 4 with a bracket because it's a closed circle, comma, we're going up to infinity. It's going right as far as possible, so then we put a parenthesis. Number 6, we have variables on both sides. I highly recommend moving the variable from the right to the left. So I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides. Negative 3x minus 1 is less than or equal to 20. Then I add 1 to both sides. Negative 3x is less than or equal to 21. divide by -3, so I need to flip the sign. X is greater than or equal to -7. So we don't always flip the sign, but anytime you multiply or divide by a negative, you need to flip it. So -7 goes there, -6 and -8. Again, we have a closed circle because it's or equal to and right for greater than. So I start with -7 with a bracket, comma, positive infinity with a parenthesis. I haven't talked about checking your answer, but remember to check. You want to plug in a number that you shade, not your circled number. So we don't want to plug in -7. I want to plug in -6. So if I do -6 times 2, that's -12, minus 1 is -13. We want to know, is that less than or equal to, if I plug in -6 over here, 5 times -6 is -30, plus 20 is -10. So -13 is less than or equal to -10, so we know we did it correctly. Looking at number 8, again we distribute first. So -3x minus 6 minus 3x is less than 2x plus 18. Combine your like terms, that gives us -6x minus 6 x less than 2x plus 18. So again, I move my variable from the right to the left, so subtract 2x. That gives me -8x minus 6 is less than 18. Add 6 to both sides. -8x is less than 24. Divide by -8. Flip the sign. X is greater than -3. So -3, -2, -4. Open circle at -3 and shade to the right. So that means we start with -3 with a parenthesis because it's open, comma, goes up to positive infinity, also with a parenthesis. And lastly, number 10, first we distribute a -1, -3x minus 3 minus 2x, greater than, distribute a -4, -4x plus 8 minus 2. Combine our like terms, gives us -5x minus 3 is greater than -4x plus 6. Add 4x to get it over to the left. That gives me -1x minus 3 is greater than 6. Add 3. -x is greater than 9. So remember that's a -1, so we need to divide by -1. X is less than -9. So -9 here, -8 here, -10 here. Open circle and left. So anytime you are shading to the left, you start at -infinity because that shows it keeps going down with a parenthesis, comma, -9, also with a parenthesis because it's an open circle.